All right, we are going to work with the story Yesterday's Gold. So let's go ahead and turn to the question sheet first, which is page 39, and let's go over the questions. Highlighter and pen ready. Carlos and Roy have been riding mountain bikes together for 4 months, 8 years, 4 years, or 2 months. So we're looking for they're riding bikes for how long, or a time frame. When Carlos's front tire hit a rock, his tire went flat. He threw over the handlebars. Nothing happened. He bent the rim of his tire. So I'm going to highlight hit a rock because that's what we're looking for. And what happened when he hit the rock? Down in the valley, Carlos found an old log cabin, a lost dog, a big bear, or a bag full of money. I'm going to highlight valley and found. Found what? Roy gasped when he hit his head. He lost a lot of blood. He saw the skeleton in the cabin. None of the above. We're looking for him gasping. Why did he gasp? The book that Carlos found in the cabin was a diary, a Bible, a dictionary, or a book of maps. I'm going to highlight book, found, and cabin. What was it? Number 6, the name of Tom Riley's girlfriend was Susan, Mary, Alice, or none of the above. So the name of the girlfriend. Tom Riley's death was caused by a gunshot, a fire, starvation in the cold weather, or a bear protecting its cub. Death caused by what? Carlos and Roy were able to find Tom Riley's gold because they figured out the code in his diary. They found a map. Carlos had a dream about it. None of the above. So they found the gold because why? Or more like how? Carlos and Roy found the gold in a hole in the floor, under a tree, under the bed, or up in the chimney. Found gold where? The boys gave the gold to their parents, to Annie, to a park, or to a museum. Gave the gold to who? Okay. Now that we've looked at the questions, we're ready to start reading. So I'm going to move those aside. Let's go ahead and begin reading Yesterday's Gold. We're going to read section 1 to find out what happens when Carlos's bike hits a rock. That's one of our questions, so I'm going to highlight hits a rock. We know that's going to happen here. A cool spring wind blew up in the valley. Carlos stopped his mountain bike. Roy stopped behind him. They looked back at the trail they had just climbed with their bikes. It's twisted like a snake down in the California valley. That breeze feels good, Carlos panted. I'm really sweating. It was a rough climb. He turned and checked the pack strapped to the rack of his bike. Better check your pack, he cautioned Roy. The trail gets rough ahead. Roy reached back and shook his pack. It was still tightly strapped. He said, better than last year. My pack flew off my bike, remember? Everything was spread all over the trail. Sleeping bag, camping stove, clothes. I learned my lesson. Well, I'm ready to go. Carlos and Roy stood up on their pedals and began rolling down the trail carefully. They picked up speed. The trail was rocky. Each bump made their bikes shake. Tree, called Roy. A fallen tree lay across their path. Without stopping, Carlos popped his front tire over the log and then his back tire. Roy did the same thing. They had been riding mountain bikes together for the last 4 years, since they were 11. They had ridden some of the hardest trails in California together. Two friends always pushed each other to ride harder and faster. So we see that they've been riding together for the last 4 years since they were 11. And here we can kind of see just how good they are at it. Suddenly, Roy cried out, "Watch out!" The trail became steeper. Their bikes went down the trail faster and faster. The trees were just a blur on either side of the trail. I'm going to put trouble here because this is kind of when their bikes pick up speed. There was a sharp turn coming, Carlos called. He hit his brakes and leaned into the curve. His back tire slid, spraying dirt and small rocks. Then Carlos saw a big rock in his path. He tried to steer around it, but it was too late. His front tire hit the rock. Oh no. Oh, look at that. That's the next words. Oh no, Carlos yelled as he flew over the handlebars like a cannonball. He landed on the mountainside. Then he rolled and bounced down into the valley like a stone, unable to stop himself. Carlos skidded to a stop only when he reached the bottom. He lay still for a few minutes, then he slowly raised his head and looked around. He blinked his eyes and shook his head. For a moment, he thought the fall was making him see things. He blinked again. Carlos was staring at an old, broken-down log cabin. So here, I'm going to write flew off bike. And then everything that happened. Because he didn't just fly off the bike. He rolled and rolled and rolled. He rolled, bounced. He was unable to stop himself until he got to the bottom. And that is the end of section 1. So, based off of what we just read, we can answer questions number 1. We can answer question number 2. And we can answer question number 3. And that is all found in section 1. So let's begin with section 2 to find out what Carlos finds in the cabin. "Carlos!" Roy cried as he ran down the valley. He tripped over branches and rocks as he ran, searching for his friend. Finally, Roy heard a voice calling. "Over here!" He ran toward the voice. Roy broke through the trees into a clearing. He almost tripped again when he saw Carlos standing in the doorway of an old cabin. He held an old book in his hand. Carlos's eyes were big, as if he had just seen a ghost. In a shaky voice, Carlos said, "You are not going to believe what I found." I'm going to highlight that because that's going to be important. You're not going to believe what I found. And then there was an old book in his hand. "That was a bad fall. I can't believe you're still alive," Roy said. "I'm alive, but somebody else isn't," Carlos answered. "Come here. You've got to check this out." That's creepy. Somebody else isn't. Roy stepped up to the doorway and looked past Carlos into the cabin. He gasped. There, on an old, broken-down bed, was a skeleton. It looked as though it had just laid down for a nap. Yikes. That's creepy. 2 hours later, Roy and Carlos had their tent set up outside the cabin. Their bikes and camping gear were spread around them. They sat on a big log looking at the book that Carlos had found inside the cabin. It was the dead man's diary. Carlos turned each brittle page carefully as he read out loud. All right, so we have the diary of the dead man. And I'm going to highlight all these dates right here because these dates are probably important for us to kind of remember what's happened to this man. "Found a fine spot to build a cabin. It will be in a clearing close to the stream where I found the gold dust. This is my big chance. If I had worked alongside the other fellows, I might have found some gold, but so would they. If I strike gold out here alone, I can bring Annie out of Boston. We can be married. I hope she does not fall in love with another young man first." So here, this is the first entry. He's going to build a cabin. We have Annie. I'm going to put a heart right here for love because that's his girl. Just so happens it's his girl, and February 14th is Valentine's Day. April 1st, 1849. It's April's Fool's Day, but I am no fool. Found more gold dust panning in the stream today. Cabin is finished. I got a letter from Annie. She says I'm the only one for her and she will wait for me forever. If I keep finding this gold dust, it should not take that long. Weather is getting warmer, every day. All right, we got it. The cabin's built. The cabin's built, and he's doing well with finding gold. He keeps finding gold dust. August 29th, 1849. Downright hot today. It's my 19th birthday. I got a fine present. 3 gold nuggets, each as big as my thumb. What a strike. Going to write Annie and tell her the good news. Won't she be happy? Maybe we can be married in the spring. So, it's his 19th birthday, which seems young, but back in this time, that's kind of when they got married. 3 gold nuggets. So, he's doing well. We got 3 more dates here. Next, we have October 20th, 1849, December 10th, 1849, and January 5th, 1850. I have found enough gold to send for Annie. Want to send her a letter today, but there is an early snow. If it should stop soon, I will go into town to send the letter and get some supplies, starting to run low on food. I'm going to circle this. Because since he was a skeleton found in the cabin, I'm guessing this is kind of where his downfall begins. Don't know what to do. It has snowed pretty steady for almost 2 months now. I am snowed in and out of food. Trapped a couple of rabbits, but that was 3 days ago. I should have worked another claim, one with some neighbors. Annie must be worried. She has not heard from me in weeks. Hope she does not think I ran off on her because I found gold. All right. Out of food. He ate 3 days ago, and she has not heard from him. We're continuing to go downhill. January 5th, 1850. Still snowing. Tried to get to town, but I am too weak. Came back to the cabin. Out of wood, so I can't start fire to keep warm. Annie, I will always love you. Hid the gold for you. If you somehow come and find the cabin, read my diary. It will lead you to gold. It's all for you. Goodbye, my love. Tom Riley. There's his death. That's the end of section 2. So based off of section 2, we can answer some more questions. We can answer number 4, number 5, number 6, and number 7. Let's keep going. Section 3, to find out how Carlos and Roy discover the secret of Tom's diary. Carlos and Roy sat without talking for a long time. Roy coughed and took the diary from Carlos. A lump in Carlos's throat made it hard for him to swallow. Night began to fall around them. They shivered in cool evening air. Finally, Carlos said, he was just a few years older than we are. So they're shook. It shook them. Roy nodded and said, I know. Tom must have been a 49er. You know, one of those guys who came to California in 1849 looking for gold. My dad took me to a 49ers museum in town last year. I guess Annie never came and found the cabin. They sat quietly for a few more minutes. Then Roy said, but you know what? That means the gold is still here. Tom told Annie to read the diary. He said it would lead her to the gold. What does that mean? He never wrote where he hid it. Sounds like a mystery. Carlos pulled up the flashlight. He pointed it at the page Roy was reading. Carlos said, look, some of the words in the diary are underlined. Let's look back and see if that means anything. They wrote the words out that Tom had underlined. Cabin, hope, it's my news, enough, you. Carlos and Roy played around with the words for a long time, but no message made sense. Finally, Roy wrote them in a list. Carlos looked at the list for a minute. Then his eyes lit up. He cried, I know where the gold is. He jumped up and ran into the cabin with his flashlight. Roy followed behind him. Carlos already had his arm halfway up the chimney. He jerked it out. Something is there. Something in here is moving, he yelped. A mouse dropped to the floor and ran off. Carlos put his hand up the chimney again. When he pulled it out, he was holding a small wooden box. This is heavy, he said, opening it up. The box was full of gold nuggets. All right, so the chimney is where he said it. How did you know where to find it? Carlos asked Roy. Carlos replied, when you wrote the words in a list, it came to me. The first letter of each spelled chimney. He pointed the flashlight at the gold. It glowed a dull yellow. What are we going to do now? Asked Carlos in a low voice. Chimney. That spells chimney. They both looked at Tom's skeleton on the bed. Carlos said, I feel like we knew him. He seems like a friend. Roy said, I don't want to keep the gold. It belongs to Tom and Annie. It's not ours. Carlos said, I feel the same way. 2 months later, the boys stood next to the new grave. A simple stone was carved in the words Tom Riley, 1830 to 1850. This was a good idea, Roy said to Carlos. Roy nodded. The museum can start building a whole new wing with the gold that we gave them. They're going to have a special show about Tom, his cabin, and his diary. And of course, they paid for this, he said, pointing to the grave. Carlos stood looking at the stone for a few minutes. Now he can be remembered by other people, but we'll never forget him, no matter what, he said quietly. Then the two friends got on their bikes and rode away. So here is what they did with the gold. Okay, so in this last section right here, section 3, we can answer the rest of the questions. We can answer question number 8, number 9, and number 10. So go ahead and go back to Kidum and put in your answers so I can see how you did. Have a great day.